Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, John Hart will join us, CEO of Open the Books. We'll talk to him about all the money you've been spending on Anthony Fauci in retirement. We have to chauffeur him, you see. Give him taxpayer-funded security, you see, to the tune of some $15 million, you see. What? We'll discuss with John coming up. And Leif LeMahieu is with us. A reporter for the Daily Wire broke a huge story going into the weekend on the FEMA officials who were intentionally leaving Trump supporters behind in their moment of need. And you can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. One of the big stories I'm looking forward to this week. Wednesday's going to be busy. Of course, you've got that secret Senate vote going on for who's going to be the next Republican leader. But you also have a big meeting between President Trump and President Biden at the White House. It's on Wednesday. In fact, a reporter shouting out to the president today, is Trump still a threat to democracy? Here's what Joe Biden said.
President Trump still a threat to democracy.
I'm going to see him on Wednesday.
What are you going to tell him about?
What's going to say to him?
What are you going to tell the Trump?
What was the last thing? When are you going to tell the truth? Is that what she yelled? I don't know who that was. I like the cut of her jib. When are you going to tell the truth? Is Trump still a threat to democracy? I'm going to see him on Wednesday, says Biden. What? What is that? That's not even an answer to the question I asked. I'm going to see him on Wednesday. So if he's not, but it's the same thing that, all these lefties are really doing. They're pretending like they never said it. Threat to democracy? Who, me? No. I said that? I don't think so. I think you got the wrong guy. The threat to democracy. No, actually, President Trump is the fulfillment of democracy. He has an amazing mandate from last week. He won the popular vote. He's won. Have you seen these graphics or any of the numbers on just how much the entire electorate has shifted in President Trump's direction? It was a full-blown lurch. Everybody moved his way. I saw a headline today. It said, Obama voters are Trump voters now. Obama voters are Trump voters now. How about that? Hispanics, I think it's a 6-point margin tilting ever so slightly to the left. It's not even a voting block. If somebody was like, well, you got to get the Hispanic vote, what does it even mean? It's so split down the middle. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Asian voters moving dramatically. Black voters moving meaningfully in Trump's direction. Young voters wildly moving in Trump's direction. Suburban women, majority go to Trump. It's amazing. And so President Trump has a mandate ahead of him, and it's because of democracy. It's because our constitutional republic said, that's the guy. That's the guy I want in charge. I preferred my life with him. The postmortems, the after-action reports, are still pouring in. How did Kamala lose? What led to this? Well, the Washington Post explored it this weekend. Headline, how Kamala Harris and Joe Biden lost to Donald Trump and left Democrats in shambles. In shambles. And they start the piece by pointing out that Joe Biden had an insular circle of longtime aides. He refused to meet with pollsters. Many on his campaign saw ads at the same time the public did when they first ran. And they said it was a big disaster with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. And then Vice President Kamala Harris replaced Biden in July. So they said the dynamic flipped. And all of a sudden, you had the campaign chairwoman, Jen O'Malley Dillon. She wanted to have a larger role in the messaging process. And they had these Zoom calls where they could talk about, what is our strategy going to be? And they got all these campaign officials all in the room, and they were talking about, okay, what's the message? Pick a line. What's the message going to be? And among the messages that they floated, they said you'd have somebody say, quote, what about too risky for too long? And then nobody liked that idea. Let's not go with that. We're not doing that. And then pollsters pushed for a single word. They wrote dangerous, which is actually kind of fun. Actually, that if I was Trump, I would adopt that. Dangerous. Danger is my middle name. Dangerous. They didn't go with that. Finally, the group settled on what they privately called the 3 U's. The triple U's, even. Unhinged, unstable, and unchecked. Unhinged, unstable, and unchecked. But the piece goes on to say that the 3 U's that Kamala Harris's campaign came up with, no one in the campaign was even able to remember it, said one campaign aide. How the hell is a voter supposed to remember it? The campaign aide added. So the campaign comes up with the 3 U's. Do you remember what they were? No, of course not. You can't remember. You got to repeat them like crazy before you finally lock them in. Campaign aide saying, that's not good. If you can barely remember them, that's not good. Now, contrast that with Donald Trump's messages, especially in the closing weeks. You remember some of these messages? Kamala broke it. Trump will fix it. That's a good line. It's a great line. That's why they closed with that line. Also, Kamala is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. A masterstroke. One of the most amazing messages ever. Ever. A Harris campaign aide declining to comment to the Washington Post on this portrait of her defeat. The Democratic Party now finds itself grappling with how it lost so definitively and how it so thoroughly misunderstood the American electorate. They expect autopsies are going to be underway. Donna Brazile, Harris ally, former chair of the Democratic National Committee, debate question leaker, said, quote, the next step for the Democrats is deep introspection. You got to figure out a process before the party decides on the next steps and who should lead it. Quote, you don't jump from one horse to another when you're riding on a donkey, she said. But a consensus has already emerged that the party failed to understand the average voter and their concerns and focused too much on Trump, according to interviews with more than 24 campaign aides, advisors, strategists, and others, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to share candid opinions about the party's loss. Oh, they were too obsessed with Trump, not enough with taking care of people. What a shocker. Have you ever worked in campaign politics? Is this a hard thing to understand? People just want to know how you're going to make their lives better or stop making their lives worse. That's it. But we should talk about Trump some more. People are like, no, I know who Trump is. Why don't you talk about you? What are you doing for me? Making things worse? Okay, it's time for you to go. The finger pointing and gripes have already begun to leak into public view, the Post reports. Many Democrats view the original sin as Biden's decision to run for a second term. Quote, Joe Biden is reason 1, 2, and 3 why we lost, a Harris aide said, noting that he was, quote, totally underwater in the polls when Harris replaced him at the top of the ticket. It was pretty rich, by the way, that you would have Harris aides attacking Biden, of all people, about how this all went down. You realize the only reason Kamala Harris became the nominee is because Joe Biden got out ahead of Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and said, I'm endorsing Kamala, and that's it. That's the only reason she got the nod. Otherwise, they thought they were going to be able to figure out a way to give her some sort of graceful exit. Oh, sorry, there was an open contest. We didn't choose you. Everybody knew Kamala was a loser, that she wasn't going to work. She was polling worse than Biden. Biden's message campaign in whispers to reporters all over Washington was, hey, we can't go with Kamala. She's even worse. I'm the only guy. Joe's the only guy who can beat Trump. And then it was in the 11th hour, Biden steps down, and then half an hour later announces, oh, and I'm supporting Kamala. That got in the way of Obama's plans. And that's how we ended up with this. That's how we ended up with a campaign where Biden is donning a Trump MAGA hat. Biden is calling Trump supporters garbage. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. So Harris aides are blaming Joe. Joe Biden is reason 1, 2, and 3 why we lost. Trump aides began to joke in the final weeks of the race that Biden was their best surrogate as he briefly put on a Trump hat, there you go, at one event less than 24 hours after Harris was viewed as the winner of the debate. Later called for Trump to be locked up politically and derisively referred to Trump supporters as, quote, garbage on a Zoom on the same evening that Harris delivered her closing speech. Quote, the guy was incredible, a Trump advisor said. Some Biden loyalists, meanwhile, fault the Obama era, technocrats, who they say first sniped at Biden from the outside, hobbling his candidacy, only to join the Harris campaign and cast themselves as saviors, armed with good data but a poor understanding of American anger. And others still have cast some blame on O'Malley Dillon, who they argue was a micromanager and whose team failed to win over voters on issues they cared about most, like immigration and the economy. Another group of Democrats have begun to question a key assumption of many of their own party's strategists during the Biden years, that the central force in American politics was the backlash to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and the rejection of MAGA politics. Do you remember all of this? How could you forget? It was the waning weeks of the election. What did they run on? Trump is Hitler, And abortion, 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 which is a weird thing to do. My enemy is Hitler, but I would like more human sacrifice in the country, please. That was the message they ran on in the end. They did. And they did under the assumption that it was the animating force of American politics, that abortion was going to bring women to the polls, that if there's anything women want more of in life, it's fewer lives. They ran on this as their closing message. And now they're beginning to second guess whether that was a good idea, given the historic defeat that the Democrats just suffered. They quote a guy called Chris Kofinas. He's a former chief of staff to Senator Joe Manchin. He said this, quote, "It's very simple. If you want to try to win elections by talking to the elites of this country, you're going to get your ass kicked. There are not enough Beyoncés, Oprahs, or Hollywood elites to elect anyone," he said. Trump is not the disease. He is the symptom. The disease is political, cultural, and economic elites who keep telling the public what they should think, feel, and believe. And guess what they told them on Tuesday? Go to hell. Now, that comes pretty close. You want to pick a lefty who got it right. That comes pretty close to nailing it. That comes very, very close to nailing it. More broadly, the Post continues, many Democrats view their defeat with Trump making inroads with Latinos, first-time voters, and lower and middle-income households, according to preliminary exit polls, not just a series of tactical campaign blunders, but as evidence of a shattered party with a brand in shambles. 2 days after the election, Open Labs, which is a Democrat data firm, produced a first-look analysis of the results obtained by the Washington Post. They found that the biggest swings away from Harris were in areas with larger populations of Asian American and Hispanic voters. You got that? So districts with heavy Asian American and heavy Hispanic populations, they went the furthest towards Donald Trump out of anyone in the country. They also found that counties with bigger shares of Muslim and Jewish voters also swung towards Trump. Man, Trump, isn't that amazing? I was commenting on this leading up to the election. I was like, you think this is possible? Could Trump win both the Orthodox Jewish vote and the Muslim vote? Is that achievable? Yeah, he just achieved it. He achieved it. He has huge shares of Muslim and Jewish voters in his camp. Two Trump advisors said they couldn't believe that they were able, for example, to beat Kamala Harris in Dearborn, Michigan. They quote a guy called Jeff Pollack. He's a Biden and Harris campaign pollster. Quote, obviously, this is a major reckoning for the Democratic Party in terms of, particularly as it relates to young men, black and Hispanic voters, and rural voters. If the economy were perceived by voters as swimming, things might be different. But for now, it's clear these voters I'm talking about, particularly young men, black men, Hispanic men, and rural white voters, do not see the Democrats as addressing their everyday needs. And that's something we need to think about holistically. That's not a Kamala Harris thing. That's a larger thing. Yes, it's a party that's completely out of touch. Completely. The Manchin guy, the Manchin aide who I just quoted a moment ago, he nailed it when he said, it's a party whose messaging is entirely dedicated to cosmopolitan elites who do not share the lives and experiences of the rest of us in the United States of America. They don't. They don't. They're the kinds of people who refuse to hold gender reveal parties because they're too regressive. Oh, we can't reveal a gender. We have to wait until the kid tells us their gender. That's the kind of insanity that the American people voted against. And they're decadent. They have no concern about the economic situation of the country. They're not worrying themselves at all. They're sitting in well-lit, well-air-conditioned studios insisting to you the economy is doing great. What are people complaining about? All of our numbers say the economy is wonderful. And it was a lie. And it was one of the most transparent lies, one of the more obvious lies. Because people can measure it based on how their own lives were going. That doesn't take a lot of fact-checking. And so thank the good Lord. And I don't know about you. Are you still praying prayers of gratitude? I am. Thank the good Lord that we were given a breath of fresh air this past week. A breath of fresh air. And now my prayers are being lifted that the Trump administration can succeed for us. For all of us. I don't care who you voted for. for all of us. And that's a prayer you should be lifting up too, no matter who you voted for. Okay, let's take a call. I've got Ron calling in from Northwest D.C. now, line 3. Hello, Ron. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Thank you, Vince, for taking my call. I love your show. Love listening to you every chance I get. The
Thank
only
you, Ron.
problem is my AM/FM radio that I've had for years since this changed over. My battery power doesn't pick up the station anymore, and I don't know why.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
do you listen online at all?
I'm
Have you
working
tried
on that.
WMAL.com?
I don't have internet, so that's what I used to get on.
Got it.
But I lost internet, and I only just have a phone now. So I'm a vet that recently became homed, or housed, should I say,
Got it.
in March. And I've been homeless for some time and been going through the motions.
Oh, man.
But
Well,
anyway,
happy
I'm
Veterans
gonna-
Day to you, Ron, and I'm glad you're in a home now.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And I love your show. I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I felt so relieved when Donald Trump won. And that night during the election, I was ready to cut off my phone, but I didn't want to hear anything from anybody. I was listening for car horns for celebration like the Biden situation.
Yes.
And thank God somebody texted me and said, God blessed us and he won. So I feel a little relieved, but I'm also concerned about his safety.
Yes. You're concerned
You
about
know,
his safety
considering
now.
the events. Say again?
You're concerned about his safety now in light of the fact that he won and it's not even yet Inauguration Day.
Well, even before he was nominated, he had a couple of incidents. So,
Yes.
If he's listening to your station, I hope he gets himself a Pope mobile.
Yeah, that would be good. A Pope mobile to protect him. It's a real shame that you would need to do that for an American president, but that's where we are. There have been multiple attempts on his life this election cycle. I have some good news, Ron, so far for you. I keep having Susan Crabtree on, who follows the Secret Service very, very closely, and she says, despite the fact that they were claiming before that Trump had all the same protections as the sitting president of the United States, she says the Secret Service has really upped now the security around him since he was elected. But boy, can we take their word for it? They did fail him, quite unfortunately, in a pretty dramatic way on July 13th. And now the American people are banking on them to do their jobs. And we're all concerned, Ron. Thank you very much. Again, happy Veterans Day. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Leif LeMahieu will be with us, a reporter for the Daily Wire. We'll talk to him about his excellent reporting going into the weekend of FEMA officials who were deliberately avoiding helping Trump supporters in their moment of need in the wake of these awful hurricanes this year. It's a huge scandal. Leif broke it. We'll talk to him coming up. And you can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Dr. Anthony Fauci, by now you know, is a ridiculous human being. And he was, when he was in the federal government, the single highest paid federal employee. How about that? That's what you get for starting COVID. And then after he retired from the federal government, well, it turns out we've been paying to protect him to the tune of some $15 million. What is going on here? For that, we turn to the man whose organization exposed all of this. John Hart is here. He's the CEO of Open the Books. John, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, good to be on, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Dr. Fauci, he leaves the government. Is this normal? Do federal officials normally get taxpayer-funded security after they leave? What a perk.
No, Vince, yeah, this is very unusual. He not only has security, he has a publicly funded chauffeur in addition to his fully staffed U.S. Marshal Security detail. And it's unusual for a lot of reasons. One, in your opening, as you pointed out accurately, is he left as the highest paid employee. He also received a lot of cash prizes when he left office from international and domestic organizations. And to put it in perspective, Dr. Fauci retired with a salary of $480,000 a year. And that's more than the president, who makes about $400,000, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court makes $312,000. And of course, most federal employees, even members of Congress, are paid, far below that. So it's odd on its face, and it just raises a lot of troubling questions that taxpayers just deserve answers to.
Look,
and as is typically the case, we got the runaround. And it's like pulling teeth to get straight answers from federal agencies.
So I want to get into the how you got all of this in just a moment, but I do want to point out, look, if there are actual threats to him that involve his time in government, that's totally unacceptable. But the idea that it would cost $15 million over the course of what? That's 2 years worth of time? Is that what you found?
Right.
The idea that it would cost
that's
$15 million? Like, there's
Right.
got to be a much cheaper way to protect this guy than spending $15 million.
Exactly. Yeah, and to be fair and accurate to Dr. Fauci is, he's reported threats to his life. I mean, that's been in the public debate, that's been out there, and that's unacceptable in any realm of reality. But he's not the only public official who's been threatened. A good comparison is Mike Pompeo. He has gotten help from Secret Service, but you're dealing that's not an apples to apples comparison, because in the case of Pompeo, you had a foreign government threatening to assassinate him, where that's a question of war and peace at a national security level. And not to minimize any threat against Dr. Fauci, but it's a different comparison. And the better comparison that's really striking in this whole investigation is there have been threats and assassinations of judges. And the FY25 budget request includes $28 million in additional funds to protect all of the nation's judges. Okay, so half of that, you think about 28 million versus 15 for one person, like it doesn't add up.
28 million for all of the nation's judges.
Right, and compared to one person, Dr. Fauci, why is he not picking up some of this tab on his own dime? And typically when an agency has a really crystal clear, solid case to make, you ask a question, and they immediately get back to you. They give you a formal statement. They're eager to get their story. And again, our mission, we're not trying to tilt the scales here. We're trying to get the information made available to the public, so there can be a transparent, open debate, and let the American people decide what's the best use of their taxpayer dollars.
$15 million.
So $15 million.
So this report, again, opened the books, getting a hold of this, a piece co-authored by Jordan Schachtel over at the Dossier. An excellent piece on this subject. And $15 million covers, in part, salaries and benefits for deputies and administrative personnel assigned to Fauci's protective detail, the costs related to transporting Fauci, and as well as law enforcement equipment, covering the term of January 4th of 2023 through September 20th of 2024. Does that mean that this security has concluded, or was that just a contract for a single term and we don't know the answer after that?
Well, we don't have an answer to that question. We've asked that, and we don't know. We don't know if this is going to be ongoing, if this is an open-ended commitment. And again, taxpayers have the right to know what this understanding is. And we got this by filing a FOIA request, and we're going to keep investigating this until we get the answers we want to get.
You filed a FOIA request. How forthcoming was the government?
Not terribly. I mean, it took. I have to double check on the timing of when it was issued versus the response we got. But you file a FOIA request when the government is not forthcoming. It's much easier just to pick up the phone and ask the question and just get an answer back.
Yes.
That's what. If you call a member of Congress's staff, I mean, I've worked for Senator Coburn for years. I was his comms director. We were eager to get our side of the story out on any story because we were proud of the work we were doing. And if the marshals were proud of this arrangement, they would have been very forthcoming and would have defended it to the hilt right out of the gate. And that just hasn't been the case. And again, the comparison of the $28 million budget to protect judges versus 15 for one person who's out of office, who is very wealthy, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Yeah. So he goes years with security detail, chauffeur service, all in retirement. Meanwhile, I've noticed that there are other figures who are supposed to be protected by the American government who've actually been injured. That would be President Trump, who was shot on July 13th of this year, when left completely vulnerable by the United States Secret Service, quite unfortunately. So I'm very concerned about why certain people are getting security at all, and why the security apparatus we have is not impressive enough to actually protect the people they're assigned to.
That's right, and there's double standards beyond the case you just mentioned. For example, RFK, while he was a presidential candidate, he requested security detail and was denied multiple times. And again, it raises that why is there an inconsistent approach? Whether you like RFK's politics or not, why are we picking and choosing it? And sort of what it appears to be is that Fauci is seen as progressive royalty. You know,
Yes.
he's upheld as this great scientist of the age, but he's no Galileo or Copernicus. I mean, he's just a person that had opinions, and he kind of imposed them on the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of unanswered questions about the effects of his policies on kids.
Yeah.
During the lockdowns.
Yeah. Where's our millions
did we
of
really
dollars?
need, exactly.
Why does he get millions of dollars, $15 million to protect him? What about the rest of us? You know, he spent all this money inventing a virus, it looks like, in Wuhan that run roughshod over the world and killed a lot of people, including Americans. Where's the money for us? It's amazing. So we get to protect him to the tune of $15 million. And to your point, just to kind of emphasize what you just said, which is it really demonstrates the political nature of all of the decision making within the Biden White House. They didn't give RFK protection because they didn't want to dignify his campaign as real. It's as simple as that. And then they gave Fauci protection because, as you put it, he's progressive royalty. And so this is the ridiculous standard by which the Biden White House has measured who gets protection and who doesn't.
That's right. That's exactly right. And again, and how are we going to measure the costs, and how are you going to compensate the millions of families of kids whose language development was delayed because they had to mask up as a 2-year-old in school? I mean, there's going to be very, very damaging long-term effects on child development because of this. And maybe Fauci ought to reimburse the families who've been affected by those policies.
In media interviews about his security detail, Dr. Fauci said that the costs are necessary and justified because of threats he has received from what he describes as the, quote, extreme radical right. Extreme radical right. So he says that the reason he needs $15 million in security over the course of 2 years is because conservatives are too mean to him?
Well, that's certainly been an argument he's made, but welcome to the world of free speech. I mean, that people have the right to express their opinions, and again, our mission as an organization is transparency. We want to make these agreements made public, so the taxpayers can have the debate amongst themselves as to whether this is justified or not.
Yeah.
And let's again bring our philosophy is, hey, if you're a progressive, you think that the solution to the world's problems is more government spending. Bring your best argument. Let's get the information out there and have at it.
Yeah.
And that's what people are demanding is they want access to this information. They want to argue about it, and they want the best idea to win. And that's what is so often is lacking. And you shouldn't have to pull teeth to get straight answers from the government.
It's pretty rich. The defund the police people gave Anthony Fauci a chauffeur in private security for $15 million. And they wonder why they lost this election. It's so crazy. Thank you very much. John Hart, the CEO of Open the Books, thank you for digging into this and exposing this government.
You bet. Thanks. Thank you, Vince. Appreciate your time.
Of course. That's John Hart. Excellent findings here on just how much you're coughing up for Anthony Fauci. Oh, good. The guy needs more benefits. Let's see here. I've got Jeff calling in from Milton, Delaware, now on line 2. Jeff, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, thanks for taking my call. The only other you I can tell you was my mom's aunt Felicia. If I didn't eat something, it would be, "What's the matter, you?" and slap upside the head, and that's how that went. So,
Jeff, that's a deep cut for the show. I was mentioning earlier in the Washington Post there were the 3 U's of Kamala Harris's campaign, and nobody could remember what they were. But Jeff bringing up that in his house, "you" meant "what's the matter, you?" What's the matter, you? Hey, what's the matter, you? Got no respect?
Yeah, and like I said, a smack upside the head if I didn't eat anything. So I was talking to your screener about should Anthony or not Anthony Fauci? He's his other case. We just talked about him, but should Alejandro Malodorous and Merrick Garlic Breath be should they feel a little queasy right now? Should they be on alert that maybe I'm reaching here, that justice might prevail on them? I know it would take a lot of meetings and all that, but what do you think?
Well, first of all, I became queasy when you referred to them as Alejandro Malodorous and Merrick Garlic Breath. As soon as you said that, I was disgusted. I was reviled yet again by both of those men.
Hey, it's what I'm here to. It's what I'm here to do.
These guys. Look, I love that the left is shaking in its boots right now about whether or not consequences are en route. In fact, they're really mad at a fella called Mike Davis. Perhaps you've heard him on our show a number of times. Mike is a hoot, and Mike's been out there saying, yeah, we're coming after you, meaning if you are breaking laws, then you should be prepared for people to come after you. In fact, here's Mike Davis talking to Benny Johnson this past week, and here's what he had to say about Tish James up in New York.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
And then this is the way that the media are reacting to this. Here's NBC's Ken Delanian, who's going after both Mike Davis and our buddy Mark Paoletta. These are just the guests of the Vince Coglianese show.
So the tension you described that the New York Times reported on within the transition team was described to us as a battle between the normies and the crazies, although, of course, the people we're talking about would disagree with that characterization. We focused on a couple of lawyers. One's named Mike Davis. He's a very conservative, kind of a bomb-throwing provocateur who used to clerk for...
It tells you a lot that NBC's audience doesn't even know who Mike Davis is. It's like, well, I got to tell you, there's this guy. He's called Mike Davis.
Justice Neil Gorsuch, he's an advisor to the transition team, and he has been out there publicly saying that Donald Trump should prosecute people like the Attorney General Tish James and Jack Smith, the special counsel, that his Justice Department should do that. He's actually articulating which crimes they should be prosecuted for, and he's making no bones about that. The other person we talked about is Mark Paoletta. He is the former general counsel of the Office of Management and Budget in Donald Trump's
great American
first term, and he has been out there not specifically advocating that the DOJ should prosecute individuals, but he is justifying the idea that the president can order the Justice Department to investigate and prosecute specific cases. So he's laying the legal groundwork. Now, the thing about that is that would violate 5 decades of norms post-Watergate, which
norms
said that the Justice Department should be independent from the president, that the president should never say, go investigate that person. These people are suggesting that Donald Trump should be able to do that with his Justice Department. And as a legal matter, they're right. We're talking about norms here, not laws, these post-Watergate.
As a legal matter, they're right. But as it relates to hurting my feelings, they're wrong. They're so wrong for thinking the president is in charge of the executive branch, which is found in the Constitution of the United States of America. Okay, coming up, we got to talk about what's going on with FEMA. As you've got this incredible report from the Daily Wire going into the weekend, appalling report, that FEMA officials had ordered their subordinates to ignore the homes of Trump supporters as they were going around in the wake of the hurricanes that hit the southeast United States, visiting homes to convey what kind of benefits Americans could receive to help with the recovery. Skip the Trump houses. Skip the houses with Trump signs. Skip the houses with Trump flags. And the workers kept coming back on their internal reporting system and saying, skipped home, Trump sign. Skipped home, Trump flag. This after the media told us that wasn't happening. They lied again. Leif LeMahieu from the Daily Wire, he broke that story. He'll join us in the next hour. Stay with us.